Hey traders, this is Chris from Promhertz Tropica Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, December 21st. So pretty decent day all around. You could call it theme of the day, could be rally day. You could call it turnaround Tuesday from what we saw yesterday. Bottom line, it was strong breath. I've got that misspelled in here. But really strong breath for the day. Before we get into the market performance, we can go through and we can kind of just take a look at here just so that you can see the raw numbers here. But in the Dow, 24 advancers, 4 decliners, S&P 426 advancing, 79 declining, Nasdaq 2265 advancing versus 575. So this is one of those days where you could definitely classify it as strong breath. Remember what we said yesterday, that we had some we had a couple signals yesterday that things might be kind of not as bad as they seemed, right? We talked about the VIX and S&P divergence, right? So that if you did not see that, I would tune into yesterday's video. But we talked about how the S&P was testing the lows of earlier in the month, December, and meanwhile the VIX wasn't doing anything like that. So I thought that was a pretty good signal, and we just needed a little bit more confirmation. One of the things that I exactly said was, hey, we need this breath to get stronger. That was a thing yesterday that I said that's going to have to, we're going to have to see buyers come in and a strong tape in this market. But here's what I was referring to, right? Yesterday's VIX, while elevated, was not near where we were in the beginning of the month. So these little clues that you can kind of pick up on the tape. I was on Benzinga earlier today, going over some charts with them, and it's kind of to kind of play a little bit of market detective. Is fun. It's fun to try to solve a puzzle that you could basically never solve, but you get little clues here and there, and it kind of helps you in positioning, and it helps you come up, develop your trading plan for the next day or for the week. But I thought that was really good, and we had that follow through. And I'll tell you what, today, if you look at some things today, they don't. It's not always perfectly. Well, it just hasn't been very easy, I would say, with this market. But when the gains happened overnight, right, which is always a little bit difficult when you kind of gap up into the day. One of the things that I said I would be was selling into the morning strength, and I tried to do that here and there because we were hitting this resistance of 4604, which again is short-term resistance. I'm looking at the 1-hour chart, and we kind of backed away from that up until about. So sorry, that is right in here that we hit this level right at 6 o'clock in the morning. We backed away from this in the first hour of the day, and then returned back and had a nice move after that. What was interesting too was Nasdaq. This did not look very good. Nasdaq is a little bit of a different picture. We talked about this too, how we were inside value on the 1 hour, and we kind of came in and tested, perfectly held this bottom of value. So again, having the value areas, using the market webs helps me quite a bit. But I'll tell you, to see this selling, Nasdaq was up about 1% going into the open. To see us kind of turn around and see again what we've been seeing is just selling pressure around the open, and that was completely negated. The Qs actually turned red for a quick minute, and that was around 10:30, and then since then we saw a really nice strong rally after that. So that was good. The other thing that we talked about yesterday was that the small caps just seemed like they were going up with a bit more ease yesterday from the lows of the day. Right. So here's the lows for the day. Whoops. Thinkorswim likes to jump around a little bit, but you could see. Well, maybe you can't see because it won't stay still. But, we had a nice recovery there at the end of the day. And it was a little bit stronger, I thought, than the Qs, Nasdaq. Right? This is the overnight session. And today, you could see the pattern looked different again in the small caps. Right? They did not dip down like the Qs did. Right? They had a little bit. So, again, for the day and for yesterday, a little bit of relative strength, right, in the small caps. So, I've been saying for a while, and I still don't like this chart, but it's nice to see us kind of carve out, perhaps a low here. Interesting for this month. Before I get into some single stock setups, like if you look at the performance year to date, IWM is positive for the month, up 30 basis points, right? So this is just the end of November till now. SPY is up. It's kind of crazy, right? The rotation that has been going on. SPY's up 2% for the for the month, right? Isn't, to me, that's just kind of crazy. And then if you look at the Qs are down 1% year to date. But I'll tell you, the rotation that's been going on under the hood, inside the S&P has been pretty spectacular, right? Last week was not a week where everything went down. The defensives did very well, and they kind of helped with that performance in the overall S&P. Now, they're not large weights in the S&P per se. I think healthcare is the biggest, what I classify as defensive is the biggest weight, but things like the consumer staples, the utilities, the REITs, and of course healthcare, which was one of the best performing sectors last week, really kind of held that performance in for the S&P. So, it been pretty dramatic, the rotation under the hood that's been going on. So let me go through a couple sectors before we, and some single names before we do that. Just again, kind of interesting to see how many areas were up over 4% for the day. Chinese internet names had a big bounce. The oil and energy names were up nicely, and the metal space was up pretty nicely. And that was another thing too, that if you look at the crude chart, which I certainly don't bring up in every one of these videos, but we made this low on 12.2, and we had a similar looking candle yesterday where we explored some lower levels but made a higher low and then moved back. Again, I still don't really love this chart because it is just above the 50 and has not taken back the 5-period moving average yet. But it's at least it's building off of something a little bit. So, and that's kind of how you have to look at this, in my opinion. How I look at some things is, are we moving at least in the right direction? And then just realizing, like even today, with as strong as today's market breadth was and the performance, that one day is not a trend. So we'll see if we can continue to build from here. And other areas that did very well today was the software areas. I mentioned the metals space. I thought this was really interesting to see Alcoa. Which we kind of noted the strength earlier in the week in this, and this was one of the TTG weekend watch list names was Alcoa that I put on there. I put Alcoa and I put Nucor in the material space, and this just had a huge day. Alcoa and is now retesting those highs. I was also watching FCX today. I would watch to see if I can get this VPOC takeout back here was the kiss of death in November. Remember, everybody was getting bullish on FCX, and I'm like, well, you can break out a value, but it's got to get over this virgin point of control. Again, this is a high area of volume that price had not revisited, and again, it was made, that volume was from here, right? And it leaves a gap, basically, if you don't revisit an area of high volume. So that's why it's called a virgin point of control. So there is a takeout and fade from there. All right, so we're right there. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, but of course I want to get into, some of the momentum names. The growth names really got going today. Things like MDB, right? This is MongoDB, right? One of the things I was talking about earlier was just, how well this name has been holding up. Looks a lot different than other names, right? And if you could look at the overall, now I know that's a little bit of cyber too, but look at the overall software space. Now it is hanging on to the 200-day moving average. It actually closed back above, but do you see the difference in an MDB versus the overall sector? So you got some nice relative strength there. You're now back above that downtrend line, which was kind of hanging out under here for a couple days. Big move there. Another name too that I thought was very strong in the group was Team, which was up over 10% for the day. Maybe this can kind of build out a W pattern, right? We'll see if that happens. I don't have any position on. I traded a name that was mentioned yesterday in the trading room by one of the Tribeca Trade Group traders, which was New Relic, right? This is a name that had big earnings move, and kind of came into the 50-day moving average. So nice in here. We're going to have some resistance. Again, I use especially names that are retracing previous levels. The 1 hour chart, the daily chart really work well for me. Notice 111 is an area too that you're going to have some that's going to line up on multiple time frames. So that's what I'm watching in that space. Also, I would say so there's a bunch of different names that we could go through in this space. Zscaler was also something that I took today. Also, I thought that this just reported on a tough time for the market. This name kind of got ahead of itself. So it's back to the 50-day moving average. I bought a little bit of calls with this one. I was kind of messing around with what name I was going to go after. Arista Networks, by the way, because again, a lot of these names, you have to kind of pick and choose a little bit. Because some are acting better than others. Arista Networks was a name I got long yesterday. Not a huge, not up 5 or 10%, but definitely moving in the right direction. Asana was a name that I got long on Friday. Took a bunch of targets on Friday and then added it back on Monday morning. Took a target. And, we'll see if this can build from here. Again, different looking chart. This one's a little bit more beaten up, but I do like that the CEO bought more shares, and I know if it kind of breaks back below the 200-day moving average, that's where I'll decide to get out of that one. I also took a. We'll get to what I was just going to say, but days like this. Well, I guess I will finish this thought. Days like this, when everything goes up, it's great to get out of some of your area, some of your names that didn't turn out to be a great swing trade. Remember, in this market, you're just not going to have all winners, right? We've talked about I talk about this quite a bit, but how you manage the losers or names that did not act or not acting very well can define your week, month, sometimes even your year, how you're dealing with your losers. Remember, everybody has losers. There's nobody out there who has a 80-90% win ratio, right? The best of the best, right? Best trading pros out there, right? Some of the legendary names have a win ratio of around like 50 to 55%. Right, so it's how you handle the losers that is going to separate, right? And of course, and how you handle the winners too is important too. But the losers is what people really lack. Some people just don't sell, right? They have a mental problem with selling something for a loss. Their ego gets in the way. So the more that you could get out of the way. By the way, like, not to get off track, but if you find someone who has a big ego, right, on Twitter, or I used to work on an institutional trading desk. The guys who had big egos, they don't last very long in trading, right? And you'll find that too, that the confident guys on Twitter, guys and girls, confidence is one thing, but being overconfident, kind of acting like a jerk, big ego, those guys are not the ones who have the best P&L. I could tell you from personal experience. It's just how it works. All right, so, but yes, it's an important concept, and that's why I mention it. So MCHP, it was kind of interesting today. I know we're already about 12, 13 minutes into the video, but I like to kind of just point out some of the observations. We kind of I came into today thinking that the semiconductors were going to be the stars of the day. Just have to continuously reassess, right? A lot of the morning's big strength was in reopening plays, right? One of the names that I talked about too was LYV, right? And I missed this trade because there's a lot of alerts going off in the first 15 minutes, and I was managing existing trades. But I mentioned if this thing can get over 107, right, a play on reopening, look at what this thing did today, right? Really nice move back over and 114. So we kind of set up the day in the morning as, hey, these are potential areas of strength, but you have to, continuously reassess, have a good watch list and have a lot of alerts set on names, right? MRVL, which is a name I've been long for a while, that name is doing okay. There's a few names that I've just been sitting in. They haven't, blasted off to the upside, and they haven't, given back. Pure Storage is another name that I've been in for a couple weeks. It hasn't done much, so there just hasn't been a reason to sell it. In either direction, on the downside or the upside. So sometimes if a name's not doing much and it's holding the breakout and it's just in digestion or consolidation mode, the best thing that you could do is just hands off, and let it do its thing, and hopefully, you get what you were looking for out of it, right? On another side, like I got a couple questions about this one. Right, this is a trade that I put on last week, the dividend ETF. Right, we were playing a lot of defensive areas of the market. We noticed that a couple of days last week, the high dividend yielding names were very strong. So I had tried DVY, select dividends, and it didn't close intraday. Then it kind of got squashed on quad witching. So I took advantage today of the bounce, and I said, okay, this is better to get out of it than down in here, right? Right, so that's what I mean in terms of, if you've had a couple bad trades on, or trades that didn't work out, today was a great day to kind of get rid of some of those names. I traded a firm for a day trade. That did fine today, up 6%. I sold it at 103. Upstart was another one too. I was kind of picking and choosing because we saw calls go up in both of these names. Upstart, was up 13%. Took out this VPOC, kind of came in a little bit right at 1030, held this, and did very well. I did not trade this one, but notice again, you're kind of it's important again to look at these 1 hour value areas, especially for these beaten up areas that they're going to bounce. Names that can bounce, but it'll be interesting to see 152 if that's a name for you. Tesla was another name too that started the day lower, came back. I'm still not really sure what to think of Tesla, and if a name is not jumping off the page to you that's saying, hey, this looks like a great setup, just kind of watch, and if you miss the low of the first part of the move, so be it. This thing has been making, as we've talked about before, it's been making lower highs. So yes, it could kind of bounce in here someplace, but it's going to need to kind of build off of that. Maybe even putting a stop if you like the hammer bar here at 922. That might be something, right? But again, that's kind of maybe the last thing I'll kind of leave with in this video is that. Well, let me talk about one other area, right? I do like the medical device group here. Right, so we talked about a bunch of different growth areas. Look at Edward Life Sciences. It's the name that I tweeted out the other day. New high in Edward Life Sciences. I'm also watching INMD, right? See if this can kind of carve out a bottom in here too. Had nice strength today. Right, another one that I'm watching is Danaher. Really, these are good companies, in my opinion. I need to see Danaher get above 318, right? And start to kind of move out and up, but again, it's holding in here. Definite names I think to kind of keep on your list. The other thing, the last thing I was going to say is, don't feel, my opinion, right? This is not advice or recommendations, of course, but I think there's so many that are trying to time the bottom in so many names. Relax, take a deep breath, right? If you are looking for more than a scalp trade. And if it's a scalp trade, then you can do anything that you want for a day trade. But if you're looking to position in some of these names, right, that you think are going to do something different, right, that are going to start trending, be patient, give it some time. You don't have to pick the absolute bottom in the name, right? If you're looking for something like this, right, a whole trend to kind of capitalize on this, right, you don't need to pick the first day. Right? If you get the bottom perfectly, so be it. But that's just one day, right? What's the difference in here, right? If you chase this after the breakout back in here, and this is just one example, but this is what you're dealing. This is and as long as you're kind of a disciplined trader and you can stay in a trend, the stock went from 260 to 333. So how big is it that you have to time the exact day that it turns around? Right? There's way too much emphasis on trying to time the bottom in these names in the turnaround. Give yourself a break, right? You go crazy trying to do that. That's kind of, there's a lot of good movers. I'm sticking to the relative strength names, and we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.